wanted to make a quick video about something that is concerning me. This Saturday, November the 11th, is Armistice Day in the UK. Armistice Day is the annual celebration where we remember our war dead and the freedoms they won for us. This year is even more political than usual. The Cenotaph in central London is a memorial. It is the emotional hub where politicians and royalty lay wreaths in remembrance. Now, I often have a problem with this so-called honouring of our war dead because we are not honouring them. It is the warmongers who sent them to war who gather around the cenotaph to remember them, the worst people possible, the people who sent them to their demise in a rich man's war. They use Armistice Day as a PR event to drum up even more support for ongoing wars, which they are doing this year. But also there's a real hypocrisy in apparently honouring our veterans, given that one of the biggest demographics of people with PTSD and who are homeless are people who have served for our nation. So we only seem to care about them once a year and for the cameras. This year, as I say, is more political than ever. Since October the 7th and the Hamas attack on Israel, the pro-Palestine marches in England have been pretty much weekly, and that is intended to happen in London on this Saturday as well, and throughout the weekend, I believe. For some veterans and others, this is being perceived as disrespectful and should be stopped. For others, they are pointing out that our war dead died to free us, not for us to remain silent when genocide is taking place in our world. Now, it really doesn't matter whether you agree with the pro-Palestine marches or not, because this video is about how the powers that be want to swoop us all up in one net and discriminate against all of us on the backs of those pro-Palestine marches. Let me explain a little bit more. Seasoned commentators such as myself, we do have concerns, and we have been able to trace something of a trajectory of what may happen with these events. So here's a rough guide. There is a worry that the meeting of two groups, the pro-Palestine group and those remembering the war dead, will meet and clash, that there will be riots, and those riots will lead to the introduction of sweeping new laws that will curtail our freedoms even more. And this is not some airy-fairy theory. This is something that is clearly being put in place. We already know that there are a number of acts intended to be put into law, which is aimed at curtailing our movement and dissent. And Gove, for example, Michael Gove, for example, who was a keynote speaker at the Art Conference last week. But Michael Gove is known as an arch plotter in Parliament. He's a globalist. He attends all the meetings, including Bilderberg. And the thing is, Michael Gove is behind new guidance where he literally wants us to be criminalized for what he calls, or what his advisors call, undermining Britain. Well, that could be anything. That could be me saying the government is awful and they're harming you, and that could be seen as undermining Britain, and that could criminalize me, which would be very scary indeed, a totalitarian cowardice new world. Because the thing is, the abusers want to take away our ability to tell people who they are, what they are doing, and they want to stop us protesting against them. This, say the conspiracy theorists, is what Saturday's potential tinderbox in central London is all about. Far-fetched? Not really. There are a cast of very visible characters who are attempting to move us in that direction. Let me start with Suella Braverman. Suella Braverman is the British Home Secretary who, due to her family ties to Israel's army, has been making the type of statements that make it seem as if her loyalties may lay with Israel rather than the UK. Which would not be uncommon, I'm sad to say. There are many British politicians who are funded by Israel under the guise of Friends of Israel, and they are funded by Israeli lobby groups. This is a fact. It shouldn't happen because it compromises them. This is also a fact. And Suella Braverman has been saying some very scary things indeed. But if you want to trace back to earlier this year, it was clear where this woman was coming from. She gave an interview to the Jewish Chronicle, and she talked with considerable pride about her marriage to a Jewish man and how they are raising their children with a strong sense of heritage. Nothing wrong with that at all. But she then showed quite clear bias by declaring that Jews needed special protection. And it has to be said that Suella Braverman is a particularly sadistic Home Secretary, and there's been a few, so it's heavy competition. She is unable to hide a dark inner side, and she has presided over some of the most senior political offices in the land, including being the Attorney General, which is the highest legal office. It is Suella Braverman who has been making shockingly inflammatory and provocative statements about these pro-Palestinian marches. She calls them hate marches, right? And she is so determined to create issues around these marches that she's going outside her remit. If any of you are familiar with Common Purpose, the way she is behaving is very common purpose like. It's outside orders. Her job is to work with the police, but the policing is supposed to remain politically neutral and only stick to the law. But she's using a national newspaper, The Times, to attempt to threaten them, browbeat them, undermine them. And she doesn't mind how hypocritical she is in getting to that goal. In her article in The Times, she's using lockdown, saying police were much harsher with lockdown protesters. And now that may be the case, but the point is Suella Braverman was not on our side when it came to lockdown, but she wants to use us now. Braverman's plan to stop dissent is absolutely outside of current law, and her desperation is naked. The Times article is very telling indeed. She makes it absolutely clear. She's like, we should be able to protest, but that's not what she wants. She wants to be able to cut down our ability to protest about what they're doing. Let me address the issue of these pro-Palestinian marches. Many believe they are anti-Semitic, but that is not my experience. There are extremists everywhere and in every campaign, and I absolutely do not support some of the imagery that we've seen, such as ripping down posters of missing children, etc. But here's the thing. You don't have to agree with those marches to know that one of the most important politicians in the British government is desperate to ban them, and with them other marches that oppose their globalist plans. People like Lawrence Fox and Douglas Murray, they are assisting this, have shown their hands. Both of them, just as two examples, have tweeted what is clearly insightful tweets. It would appear that there are a number of people who want riots. And you know what happens when we riot? They use it against us to further their totalitarianism towards us. Now, I'm not saying that Douglas Murray and Lawrence Fox are paid by the government or the state to be provocateurs, but I am saying that their actions is enabling the state to repress the people more. So the net result is still the same, whether they are shills or not. And it's also interesting, the movements on social media this week. Elon Musk, who now owns X, formerly Twitter, he's met up with some interesting people recently, including Douglas Murray, including Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister. And some believe the return of Tommy Robinson and Katie Hopkins to X this week is all part of fanning the flames. Both Hopkins and Robinson have been previously funded by Zionists who have funded the Zionist organization Rebel News. And their return, Hopkins and Robinson's return, heralded headlines, which seemed a bit OTT and orchestrated, didn't it? All the world's a stage, eh? Many people are saying, me personally, I don't think they should have been banned in the first place, but along with other people, I think the timing of their return is extremely interesting. Tommy Robinson is calling for men to be in central London on Saturday. News, which we all know is controlled opposition, have called these types of people far-right thugs. And that's veterans and just regular people all over the land wondering what they did to be demonized in this way. I say this to people: do not trust those who are promoted to great heights when their message is war and division. This is a race war that they are attempting to do. We are being whipped into a race and culture war. I take nothing away from those who respond emotionally at the suggestion that our war dead will be disrespected. We won't allow that, and there is no reason to believe there will be. And the fact is that this is from on high and it permeates all areas. They're all in it together. The former wife to Michael Gove, who is currently drawing up those extremist plans that I referred to, had the front page of the Daily Mail to send out a dog whistle of a war cry, talking in emotive language. These people are divisive, and it's for a reason. We have to beware of the nudging and the agents of state who infiltrate movements, whether on the street, on social media, or from the luxury of a newspaper column. There are agent provocateurs everywhere. I believe the roles of such voices as Braverman, Fox and Murray is to act as lightning rods to get everybody else to operate to their commands. The aim I can see is to harness the power of the digital age to amplify their rotten to the core messages. They are set on a course of division, riots, and ultimately the rescinding of our rights to protest. Such types no longer have to infiltrate groups in a shadowy way, but are in plain sight and in some of the highest offices in the land. They want carnage and a riot, which will lead to more oppression of us. Please don't give it to them.